Hey everyone, Ben Coomber Radio, episode number 391, and today is a very exciting day because a past guest is back on the show to talk about a different subject. This individual is an awesome human being, someone that I've known for a while. We discussed how we met in the last podcast. So if you haven't listened to that podcast, go back and listen to that podcast. Without too much fluff, Zanna Van Dijk, welcome back to the show. Hello.
Hello. Woohoo. Yeah, I'm so happy to be back.
I should really put more effort into my editing, and what could have happened then is we could have had like fireworks and explosions and party poppers, but we don't.
No, I'll just take the nice intro, mate. That'll do.
That'll do, pig.
That'll do.
Right. So I follow your work with absolute fascination, partly because you're a good human being, and I say that it's hard to kind of say these days in the fitness industry, because I think there is a lack of good human beings in the fitness industry. I don't think there's enough people saying the right things in the right kind of way. Mm-hmm. And you have this health and fitness following. You are inspiring a huge amount of people, but on the other side of it, there's this kind of sustainability piece. There's this, okay, let's look at what we're doing to the environment. Let's look at the future of food. And I'm currently fascinated by this, firstly, because I'm doing Veganuary and I'm going all in on a plant-based diet. And secondly, I think you're talking about the future, and not enough people are. We're talking a lot about the present. And the world we're living in is moving hellishly fast.
Oh, yeah. I don't know if you saw that article that came out the other day. We have 12 years to stop catastrophic climate change to the point where we're pretty much going to go into a bottomless pit of hell. Sorry to just put that out there straight away in the first 2 minutes of the podcast. But there was that study which was released where they basically were like, you have 12 years we as humanity have 12 years to stop us going over this tipping point, which means that we won't be able to increase the temperature of the globe less than 1.5 degrees. And we kind of believe that if we go over 1.5 degrees, we're getting into pretty dangerous territory in terms of what's going to happen. So we kind of need to get our act together imminently. The more that I've learned about it, I've just realized, might be quite important for me to talk about this now. And I kind of feel like global consciousness of climate change, the planet, planetary health is increasing, perhaps not as fast as we might need it to increase, but people are starting to care more and realizing that their daily actions have an impact. So I want to be somebody who's there saying, yes, they do have an impact. Here's some things that you can do.
So I'm a huge fan of Jordan B. Peterson's work, and he talks an awful lot about, personal responsibility. Quite often when we look at things like the environment and public policy and food ecosystem, all that kind of stuff, people sit and wait for like the government to do something, for something to say, right, we're now doing this as a collective. But actually, one of the things that the vegan plant-based movement is great at, it's saying we all have personal responsibility. You find out where your ethics lie and what you believe in, and go for that. And I really do see a huge amount of value in that. And I want people to know that there is power in the one, and when that multiplies to two, and et cetera, et cetera. So like with this whole piece, like what changes have you made, and what are you encouraging other people to do on almost like a climate and world level? I'm fascinated.
So what you said is very valid, because I believe that governments aren't going to change unless the population changes. If you take the example of single-use plastic straws, etc., when Blue Planet 2 happened, it raised public consciousness about plastic. Everybody was talking about it, and then the government started to instill changes. The government didn't do it first, and then we listened. We wanted change, and they gave us it. So we kind of have to be leaning in a certain direction for wider change to happen. We can't just leave it to the government, because otherwise we'll just keep going the way that we are because they think that we're happy. In terms of my personal changes that I made, I started out with dietary changes, just eating less meat. I was very slow and steady. It took me like probably 2.5 years to transition to being fully plant-based. And I just reduced meat, then became vegetarian, and then eventually became vegan. And then along the way, I also made other changes to my lifestyle. A big area for me was plastic. So fighting plastic, fighting single-use plastic, doing lots of beach cleans, tons of beach cleans. That's been a big part of what I've done and what I continue to do. And also, once you start to learn, you just realize there's like literally a bazillion ways that you could change. And that's the overwhelming, scary part. That's the bit which I try to not dwell on too much, because you realize that our whole lifestyle that we live now, modern life isn't sustainable in any sense of the word, right? And you soon realize, oh my God, there's nothing I can do which is actually supporting the planet. In terms of my daily habits, everything is built to support being convenient and being easy. And sometimes the easy and convenient option isn't the most sustainable. But I've decided to not dwell on that and instead choose to be empowered to make personal choices in my life, which I know are a part of positive change. So yeah, it's gone from being dietary and just plastic, but also now trying to do things like switch my energy to provider to be one that's 100% renewable energy, etc., etc., etc. So trying to just make changes as I go along and trying desperately to not get too overwhelmed, because when you get overwhelmed, you don't do anything. You kind of get forced into stagnation. So I rather just make small changes and try and feel positive about it.
This tipping point that you talk about with the environment, like when you say it's like, I suppose the changes that you're making right now in your lifestyle, is that impacting that? So I'm imagining that all the things that we're doing with like greenhouse gases and stuff, they're the things that are impacting this shift that might change in 12 years' time. Yeah. So actually, if we reduce the amount that we use our cars, the amount of methane in the atmosphere from, meat production and all that kind of stuff, that is going to help shift this change.
Oh yeah, 110%. Every single thing that we do matters. In terms of, for example, for somebody who's vegan like myself, you save 1,100 gallons of water a day, 45 pounds of grain, 30 square foot of forested land, and 20 pounds of greenhouse gases in one day by eating plant-based, which is quite significant. So that there is literally a tangible impact. If you take it away from food, if you take it into plastic, if you take one coffee cup, you have one disposable coffee cup every single day. If you then switch that to a reusable cup every day, you've saved 24 pounds of waste from going to landfill a year, just from that one coffee cup a day. So people think that this small little change which they make on a daily basis isn't going to have any impact, but every single thing you do adds up.
I find waste fascinating because I'm a fanatical recycler. I always have been. I just don't like, if I've got something in my hand that can be reused, I'm like, why on earth would I put it into waste? And I just think, like, you go through like London and look at all the bins around the tube and stuff, and just think, right, that bin right there, multiply it by like, I don't know, 100,000. And that's the waste that's being produced every day. And then when you try and multiply that in your head and go, where does that stuff go? Does it disappear? Does it get burnt? And like, that's where I think it cripples the human brain of just even trying to imagine that shit.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw my announcement yesterday that I'm filming a mini-series with BBC Earth. So I've started presenting a series for them about sustainability, and the next episode that's coming out is about where our waste goes. And I got to go inside waste management plants and see how it's all managed. Oh my God, it blew my mind. I went to the one which is from my local area, so it handles 4 boroughs in London. I can't remember the exact amount of waste that they handle a day, but it's like 7,000 tons or something a day. It was stupid amounts of waste. There's these massive claws like picking up hundreds of tons of trash and moving it around so it doesn't set fire. The smell, the quantity, it just really completely hit home to me, like the sheer amount of trash that is just produced in 4 boroughs of London. That is nothing. There's so many boroughs in London. And I just thought, wow, this makes me even more motivated to try and reduce my waste. And that was just purely landfill stuff. That wasn't even recycling. So it's really quite mind-boggling.
Wow. Yeah, I suppose sometimes it's like, it's ignorance. Ignorance is bliss, and it is to a certain extent. But when the news articles are coming out and they're like, oh, by the way, this is happening in like 12 years time, which is in your generation and it's going to affect, you know, the world that we live in. Well, actually, you have to start to pay attention a little bit.
Oh yeah, I kind of realised something which really motivated me is I'm an avid scuba diver, and I've been scuba diving since I was quite young. And I just had a conversation with my dad, and he was like, "You do realise coral reefs will be gone in the next 5 to 10 years?" I'm like, "Oh, really?" And he's like, "Yeah," because my dad has been diving for 30, 40 years, and he's like, "Zanna, there's nothing left now. In 5, 10 years, it's all going to be gone." Oh my God! Like if I have kids, they'll never see coral reefs. Like that actually broke my heart. I cried. I was like, wow, they're not going to be able to jump into the ocean and see little Nemo swimming in his anemone because he's not going to be there anymore. So that things like that gives me goosebumps and give me like an urge of motivation to think this isn't just for me. We're the first generation who have a true concept of what we're doing. Like the generation before didn't have a clue what was going on. They were just trying to grow and try and industrialize and trying to like regrow the population after the war, etc. And now we're here and we've kind of created a bit of a mess for ourselves. And the next generation are going to be in an absolute shit show. So we're the ones who really need to be trying to tackle all the issues that are going on right now, just so future generations can enjoy everything, the fruits of our planet, coral reefs. Like, I feel like everybody should have the right to be able to go and swim on a coral reef, but maybe they won't in 10 years' time.
Do you think the media censors some of this information so people don't know everything that's going on, or is it there?
I don't know. I think there's a lot of people don't want to jump to conclusions about things either. Like, for example, you know, the California wildfires which happened, which were absolutely crazy. I was actually in California when they happened and it was devastating. And those are definitely related to climate change. Like I spoke to a few people out in California, and these wildfires have never been like this before. It's all happening more and more over the last few years. When I was in California the year before, they had crazy fires in Yosemite when I was there. It feels like they're just getting worse every single year, but nobody wants to point the finger at climate change. But I kind of feel like maybe it's quite a big contributing factor.
It's a shame because I'd love to research stuff like this more, and it's tough because, you know, we've all got, you know, jobs to do, and my main thing is health and fitness and nutrition and things like that. But, you know, if I think about the last 2 years in the UK, it's something my brother said to me a couple of days ago, actually. He's like, do we get the seasons anymore in the UK? Kind of feels like we get a summer and then we get a winter, but that's only really happened over the last couple of years. So it stayed pretty warm till like mid-October this year, and then now it's just sort of cold.
Freezing.
It's weird.
Yeah, it's things. I was in Miami, and there was crazy flooding going on in Miami, and they're thinking that within 10 years Miami will be underwater because the levels are rising so much. Miami is just going to be gone. It's just going to be underwater because they're getting floods every single year. They're getting massive floods there. I'm like, holy moly, why is nobody talking about this? Another thing which I found really interesting, somebody told me the other day, I can't give you a source for this, but somebody told me the other day that there's going to be quite big issues with water shortages, because, you know, Cape Town had that big issues this year with water shortages.
Yep.
Apparently, London is on the top 10 cities to be hit by water shortages. Don't really know why, but apparently London is like really high on the hit list for when things start to get a bit short. London, like worldwide capital cities, London's going to be hit hard. Maybe it's our systems that we have, I don't know. But it's kind of scary because you think it's not going to happen in your own country, but...
Yeah, of course. So let me shift the conversation slightly kind of back to the diet side of things, because it's obviously something that I'm exploring at the moment. When you kind of look at the environmental impact, of kind of meat production, a lot of the information that I've come across at the moment is very geared towards the American food system, which I'd say is highly industrialized. You know, there's huge issues with factory farming. You know, the volume of food that they're producing is very geared towards, you know, processed foods, and they need this kind of food source to produce the food that Americans have come to enjoy, and what companies have kind of almost made Americans enjoy. I suppose one of the things I'm kind of trying to get at is, is there an argument to say, okay, if we farmed like we did back in the day, we went towards a more closed farming system, it became more local, people weren't eating processed food, so there isn't a high need for factory farming, and actually maybe everyone ate maybe one serving of animal protein a day or 3 or 4 a week. Like, is there legs there? Is that sustainable? Or is the feeling in the community that genuinely, if we stay on this trajectory, it's like, nah?
Okay, one thing I was going to throw out there is, you said about US factory farms.
Yep.
Do you have over 800 mega factory farms in the UK? And we've had a 26% increase in factory farming over the past 6 years. So we have had quite a lot of factory farms come up here, but we feel like we don't have them because we see nice rolling hills with sheep living their best lives. And there are some amazing farms in the UK, and I'm not going to doubt that. A lot of my family friends are farmers and I support what they do. But there are a lot of mega factory farms here.
Sure.
In terms of longevity, I think that there is an argument to say that for ultimate sustainability, we need to have an element of combining arable farming with livestock. For example, I have a friend who's an expert in sustainable eating. He lives over in America, but he's a lecturer at university, and he was telling me that it's very beneficial for example, if you have 4 crop fields and you put livestock on 2 and crops on the 2, and you cycle them, the animals, as they poo nitrates into the soil and they re-nourish the soil, which supports topsoil health. We do have a massive issue with topsoil, but I won't go into that. We do have huge issues with soil health, and we're said to have about 50 years of topsoil left. So we really need to get these circular farming systems going where animals are re-nourishing the soil. From an ethical perspective, which is not environmental, I wouldn't want to eat the animals. But if you're somebody who didn't have the same ethical perspective as me, that would be a more sustainable way to farm crops, because the animals would be living longer and they would be re-nourishing the soil, but also you still get to have meat. Also, if you did use a system like that, I don't think we could physically meet more than once a week in terms of, in terms of like the quantity of animals, and also the fact that animals would have to live longer. They wouldn't be able to be like grown and killed so quickly, because, for example, a normal pig might live 8 years, but they normally live 6 months in the meat industry. Animals would be living out more of their natural lifespan, which means we couldn't kill them as quickly. So I think you wouldn't be able to produce the sheer quantity of meat which we're currently accustomed to. So I would theorize, perhaps just from my own opinion, that we wouldn't be able to eat more than, maybe once a week. But when I talked to my parents about how they used to eat, they used to just have chicken on a weekend, and it was like a treat, like a Sunday roast, have your Sunday chicken, and that was like your weekly treat. So I feel like there's just been a massive shift over the past 30, 40 years to having it every day.
Yeah, well, my family were exactly the same. They used to like almost save up for a ham, and they used to have a weekend, cook a ham, and once it was gone, and you were back to, kind of slim pickings. I think this is a fascinating argument, and I suppose one of the things I'm concerned about is where all these arguments kind of intersect, because like GMOs are a big talking point, and the reality is, unless we start to and continue to sort of manipulate the genetics of food and start to play around with things in labs and stuff, we're not actually going to find the long-term solutions. So I just sometimes wonder where kind of people that are very against kind of, what's the word? They're kind of very pro, like never playing around with our food and letting it all grow naturally and stuff. Like, I'm not even sure that argument is sustainable, because we're already doing things to support the future population. If we don't do more, we won't get there.
Yeah, I find this is something which I struggle with, because my friend Ryan, who's an expert in sustainability, the thing which he gets the most worried about is soil health. And he's like, Zanna, nobody's talking about soil. And we've got a serious business going on with soil health. I am not the most educated on this. But he's telling me that we need to try and eat more organic food. And I'm like, mate, nobody wants to eat organic. So, but then I'm also thinking, if you want to produce the sheer quantity of food for the ever-growing population, don't we need to be having maybe some GMOs? But then I'm like, there's this conflict between these different arguments, and I just don't know which way to go. So there's definitely areas in which I'm like, I don't know what the answer is to this. I don't know the answer to a lot of things. But yeah, that's one area where I'm a little bit unsure of what the right way to go is in the future.
I think there's a huge amount of unknown in loads of this, and the boat either way is kind of going in the right direction in some of the communities. It's like, I just recently was talking to my brother again about a report that's come out on electric cars and how actually they're not as good for the environment as we thought they are because the pressure they're putting on traditional systems. So actually it is costing more to produce than we think, and the impact on the environment and fossil fuels and all that kind of stuff. But even that being said, the boat's moving in the right direction. Like, we're doing things to try and get there. Companies are trying to innovate to get there. And while we don't have all the answers yet, if we keep trying, we'll probably get there. And I just wonder if the same argument or issue is going to crop up with a lot of the kind of almost replica meats that are being created. We've now got these really advanced meats coming to the market, very expensive at the moment. Are we going to find out in 2 years' time that it costs so much in like lab time and all this kind of stuff that it's, it's kind of going to blow up again? Because as we spoke about before we got on this podcast, there's definitely a very anti-vegan movement. And the problem is this then fuels the fire of being anti-vegan, because it's like, see, told you so. Took 3 lorries to do that or whatever.
I feel like there's always going to be a counter argument for every single thing. And no diet you're ever going to have is going to be 100% sustainable. And I just think, like, no matter where you are in the world, unless you're growing every single crop yourself by hand, organically in your back garden, using water from the river, I feel like, and maybe you're living in a hut wearing hemp, then I feel like maybe you're not being 100% sustainable. Do you know what I mean? So we can pick each other apart till we fall asleep. We're so tired of it, but that's not going to solve anything. We just need to try and reach some sort of common ground, which is supporting the planet. That's my opinion.
Is there a long-term goal for you where you're like living on a farm, like you're growing your own crops? Is that part of the Zanna vision?
Oh God, yeah. I don't know if you ever saw any of my stories when I'm at home. My dad grows
Yorkshire.
like all of my parents' veggies. He grows them himself. He has like a greenhouse at his house, which he grows like tomatoes in, so he can grow like more exotic things because he has a greenhouse. So he has like tomatoes and grapes and cucumbers and peppers, and then he has cabbages and broccolis and cauliflower and asparagus and raspberries and everything. It's literally amazing. And every time I go home, I'm like, damn, this is the goal. This is the goal. So one day I'd love to grow my own stuff, but for now, I mean, I live in central London, so that ain't gonna happen. But down the line, I would love that. I would love that.
Tell you what, being vegan in London is way easier than anywhere else.
Oh, it really is. It really is.
I was in London yesterday and I just Googled it and it was like bing, 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 bing of places to eat.
Everywhere. Like, it's just one of the most vegan friendly places I've ever been.
Have you explored places in the UK that are not far behind it? I know Brighton is very hot on the vegan scene.
Yeah, Brighton, Bristol as well. Bristol I found to be amazing. I think because they're quite like, they've got the most independent shops in the UK, haven't they, in Bristol? So it's quite like a trendy, independent sort of place. And there were so many vegan-friendly cafes. So, but to be fair, like, I went up north. I went to the Lake District, the depths of the Lake District. And there was 2 entirely vegan pubs. So wow. I know, I was like, pubs? Vegan? Lake District? But these things are happening. But it actually didn't label itself as vegan. I went in and I spoke to the owner and she was like, oh yeah, everything on the menu is vegan, but we don't call ourselves a vegan pub. I'm like, what?
So what do they call themselves?
It's just like a pub. It's like something duck. The something duck. I can't remember. But yeah, she's like, we don't kind of push the fact that we're vegan, but the food's vegan.
So with that being said, do you think there is going to be a shift in the language people have to use when it comes to this movement? Because at the moment, the vegan movement has let's be honest, it's tarnished to a degree because of the approach some vegan people have.
Yes.
Do you think this language will start to just be, this is more sustainable, plant-based is the future? Like, do you see that?
Yeah, and I think it's already happening. I think more and more people are just calling themselves plant-based. And actually, I'd say that like 85% of the time, I call myself plant-based, because when you use the word vegan, it insinuates a whole lifestyle. So not having leather in your car, not owning any leather items, not wearing wool. Like, people who are vegan are like next level and take that to all areas of their life. And I'm not there yet. So I tend to say that I eat a vegan diet, and I'm an aspiring vegan when it comes to other areas of my life. But to be safe, I tend to just say that I'm plant-based. And yeah, I think like plant-focused. One of my friends says plant-focused because he eats mostly plant-based, but not 100%. He just tries to eat more sustainably. So I think that is the way that it's shifting, you know?
So I met someone last night. I was at an event, and this lady said to me, she goes, yeah, one of my life missions is to make everyone vegan. And I just stood there and I thought, you know, I'm just thinking about the journey that you had with your own nutrition. And you're like, look, I started off here, I kind of went a bit veggie, then I just kind of got more plants in there, and they ended up transitioning 100% plant-based. And that is the way everyone's going to have to go. Like, I'm doing a full-on vegan diet now because I have my reasons. I want to go all in on the environment. I'm quite an immersive person. But no one's going to be able to make that transition. And I think if the language doesn't change from the vegan community, they are going to alienate more and more people, right?
Yeah, and I just think, if I'm 100% realistic with myself, and I've never actually said this online before, but I don't think the whole world is going to go vegan. Like, a lot of vegans like to say that, but I just think I've met so many people who are so passionately not vegan that I just think, be realistic. The whole world isn't going to go vegan. And that's why I think a lot of people like myself who are plant-based need to have compassion towards people who are not vegan, instead of bashing them and saying the way that you're living is wrong and it's unsustainable and it's doing this, it's doing that. That's not going to help anybody, because as soon as you criticize the way somebody eats, you're criticizing one of the biggest life choices. You're criticizing something they do 3 to 5 times a day. Like, how are you expecting them to take that with open arms and be like, oh, thank you for the feedback, I'm going to change now? Like, that's not going to work. The best thing to do is, I'd like to say, lead by example. I'd just like to be there and say, look, I eat lots of plants and I feel fantastic, and these are the reasons why I'm doing it. Hopefully that inspires you. But also, if somebody asks me why I'm doing it, I will say to them, do you want to have this conversation? That's literally what I say to them. I'm like, do you want to have this conversation? Then they say yes or no. If they say yes, I will happily tell them why I do this. But I don't think we need to be pushing every single person to be going vegan, because I don't think that's realistic. I think the most realistic thing is to get the vast majority of the population to reduce. And I think we should try and not just make personal change. Like, every single person who reduces, fantastic, you are making a massive impact. But also, if we open ourselves up to the ideas of personally reducing, then there might be wider policy change as well, and that'll definitely help on a global scale. So that's my personal opinion.
I love that. So looking at the functional components of a vegan diet, if someone was to ask you the question, Zanna, I want to eat more plant-based, like what tips would you recommend that I do to just kind of give myself the best start to make a decent transition and not kind of almost suffer? And I ask this partly because there's going to be people listening that maybe want to implement a little bit of change. And also, when I started to make the changes, I found it quite difficult because I felt like I was missing the meat. It's like something had been taken out of my food, and I'm crying like a baby. So if you've got any tips there, I think that would be awesome.
Yeah, I'd say one thing is, when you start, don't cut out, add in. So just add in more plant-based meals. Don't be like, I'm not going to eat any meat ever again. Well, if you want to, good for you, but I wasn't there when I started. I would say try adding in more plant-based meals. Try adding in beans and legumes. Before I became veggie, I just never ate beans. I was just like, who the hell eats those? Well, me now. So I literally just didn't eat them because I was like, well, I'll just eat chicken, mate. So I had never really eaten like a chickpea curry or like black bean stew or any of these things. So for me, the first like 6 months was kind of adding in these new food groups and learning how the hell to cook them and what to do with them. And then by the time I was 6 months in, I was thinking, well, actually, I really like these things. And I was getting to the point when I was switching my chicken for my black beans, or switching my eggs for my scrambled tofu, which is very easy to do. It always sounds intimidating, very easy. So that's what I started doing, adding things in rather than focusing on taking out. And the other thing, which I know you struggled with feeling satiated, just eat more food. Because I think when people go into eating more plants, they forget that plants often are like less calorically dense than animal products, and you end up just being hungry, or just losing weight, which you might not want to lose, and probably not the right way to lose weight. So I'd rather you just try and eat a little bit more food. This is like one of the best bits about eating plant-based, you get to eat bigger portions. So take advantage of that and just eat more.
I agree. I've even had a couple of ready meals from the supermarket. I had the Wicked Kitchen like burrito from Tesco's, and that was a really big meal for like 540 calories. Was super tasty. And that's going to be the problematic area for everyone, is almost you have to reinvest that time in the kitchen to learn those skills again. And I think that's part of the thing that in the back of my mind I'm struggling with, because it's like I've learned how to be a pretty decent chef with the food that I eat, and it's now I've got to like retrain.
Yeah, it took time for me. It took time, but now I'm at a point where like I don't know, I can't think of any other way to cook but this way, because I've been doing it for so long that I'm like, how do we cook chicken again? So yeah, you get used to it. You get used to it, and you learn your staples. Like I have meals where I just cook them in like 3 minutes. I'm like lentils in a pan, mushrooms in a pan, herbs, vegan cheese, like pasta, bosh. Like it literally just takes 5 minutes, and you're like, okay, done. But it takes you time to find those easy meals, which literally take you no effort, you know?
Vegan cheese, I'm sorry, it needs to up their game.
No, mate, you haven't tried the good stuff, because there is some shocking stuff.
Well, I've had all the shockers so far.
Like, don't be going to the average supermarket, mate. You got to make the effort to order it online or from a special place.
Oh wow!
Yeah, because then it's the good stuff. There are some really good brands. I don't know if you want me to tell you this, but there's places like Happy Cheese. Have you heard of Happy Cheese?
Nope.
That's the good shit. I eat that.
Just had the sad cheese.
No, don't be having the sad cheese. Don't be having the sad cheese. Happy Cheese is really good. I'm not that keen on the VO Life stuff. Is that what you had? Don't do that.
I have had some of that, yeah.
No, don't go there. And then my friend has a company called Kinda Co, like Kinda Co. She makes all her own cheese in London, but she ships it across the UK. That's the best vegan cheese I've ever had. So.
And what's that made of?
Cashews.
Ooh.
Yes.
So is it more or less calorific than normal cheese?
It's probably say it's like on the same level. I don't measure calories, so I have no idea. But I'd say the same sort of level.
Okay. So they are some awesome practical tips. Thank you. We've talked about being a bit more sustainable with your plastics, so having a water bottle, having a coffee cup, that kind of stuff. I've talked about recycling, which for me, it just has to be a given. I'd like to think that everyone's been using the old blue bin for quite some time. Is there anything else that sticks out in your mind that people can do to create an impact that's a fairly easy transition?
I think something I just want to say is when you think of eating plant-based, or when you think of vegan food, don't just think of it as an all or nothing thing. I have a study to tell you, and it said, when you look at people like a vegan person versus a meat eater, if you half your meat consumption, so you just reduce your meat consumption by 50%, you give 40% reduced nitrogen emissions, 40% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions, and 23% land use. So just by halving your meat intake a week, you're making huge impacts in terms of your actual like planetary, what's the word? Consequences. The planetary consequences of your diet are so much less, even just by halving your meat intake. So I think don't go into it thinking, I'm going whole hog, I'm going to be vegan, I'm going to save the planet. Even if you just do 50% reduced meat, you're having a massive impact. And also something else is, I went into this, there's a YouTube video which I put out when I started. So I'm a blogger, guys. So I've documented my whole journey of transitioning. And if you knew me back then, I was like meat queen. If my friend said to me, do you want to go to a vegetarian restaurant? I'd be like, no. So that was me. I was not there for the vegetarians. And then even when I started to reduce my meat, I made this YouTube video and I literally said in the video, don't worry, I'm never going to go vegetarian and I'm definitely not going vegan. Like this video is on my YouTube channel and you can literally watch my YouTube videos over the course of those 2 years and watch my perceptions shift. So just don't worry about the end goal. Just start with reducing and you'll never know where you end up. You might be a plant pusher in 2 years' time. So
this has been an awesome conversation. Thank you very, very much. I do have one theory that I want to run past you that's boiling around in my head, and
oh God,
part of it's connected to, because I am not going to make right now a transition to a vegan diet for ethical reasons. I haven't made that shift myself. Whether I make that shift in the future, I'm open to. I'm open to any kind of change for myself. So I still want in my head right now for meat to be in some element of my life, because for me right now there's an enjoyment factor there. When I look at a lot of the data that's going around and we look at, you know, the industrial farming side of meat production and stuff, I start to think, well, if the health movement gets up enough gravity that way more people are eating a way more natural diet. So let's say we start just completely using those 4 useful aisles in the supermarket, and we're not buying hot dogs in a can and all that kind of shit, then it kind of feels like almost that side of the industry, like they almost don't have as much business. They've got to wind down, they've got to slow down. And then if we start to reduce our food waste, and then if we start to reduce the amount of food that we're actually eating, because most of us are eating too many calories, with those 3 things, it kind of feels like this industrial side of the meat industry will almost kind of like go out of business, or partly, like, I don't know. It's just an idea in my head.
Yeah, you know what? I like that theory and I would like that to come true. Not sure it will. Just because like, if you look at, there's just so much money. There's so much money in meat and dairy and like animal products. There's so much money there. And I just don't think that's gonna, I just don't know if they'll let it go down the drain. And also, I don't know, like this is just me being a little bit, I am like an eternal optimist, but then there's just this little niggling bit of pessimism right here. Where I'm just like, I just don't know if global awareness of health, in like planetary health, personal health, all of these things is going to raise enough in time for these changes to happen. So that's why I'm encouraging you, somebody who's listening to this podcast, to be a part of positive change, because we need some rapid things to happen. So yeah, that's just, I hate to be that honest. That is exactly what I think.
We have to be this honest, and honest conversations need to happen. People need to take personal responsibility. I talk about, you know, personal responsibility all the time. I implore people to get in the community and do projects with health and sport and all sorts of stuff. It's stuff that we don't engage in anymore because, you know, we've all made ourselves a little bit too busy with the wrong kind of stuff.
Yes.
Not enough people are probably giving their time to communities and people that need it. And that's both, you know, time and energy and knowledge and resources and money and all sorts of things. And this is kind of wrapped up in the conversation that we're talking about today. So if you right here now can make positive change in your diet, or with plastic use, or with the community, with the people that you know, like, make that step.
Yeah. I have a Facebook group. If anybody wants non-judgmental support, there's a Facebook group called the Living Consciously Crew. There's about 11,000 of us in there now. And we just talk about trying to live more sustainably. So like where to get packaging-free shampoo, or is it really worth getting an eco egg, which is this thing which you wash your clothes with. So talking about all these different things in there. So if you ever want to ask a question, or you think something's a little bit silly, you don't know who to ask or where to go, that's where I like to talk about these sorts of things. So yeah.
Awesome.
Not everybody in there is vegan, by the way. Probably like 10% of the people. Everybody in there is just trying to live a little bit more consciously. So
awesome. Remind me of the name of that Facebook group again.
Living Consciously Crew.
Awesome. Well, if you're listening to this and you want to join, go find that on Facebook. Zanna, is there anything else that you want to bring up that say, hey, if you like me, go and check this thing out? I think you'll think it's cool.
I would say it's always hard to plug yourself, but I do have a swimwear company, which is called Stay Wild Swim, and it's made of regenerated ocean plastic. It's made 100% ethically, 100% sustainably. It's handcrafted in London by people who are paid a fair wage. It's actually made through a social enterprise. So it's the people who create the swimwear are people who have come from disadvantaged backgrounds and have been trained in skills in clothes making to produce the swimwear. And it's like top-notch premium quality stuff. Again, fabrics made of recycled plastic, actually fishing nets taken from the oceans. And the stitching is made from recycled plastic bottles. So every single element is 100% ethical, sustainable. We even sell, there's something you might have heard of called microplastics. We sell these bags which you can wash your swimwear in, so no microplastics are released. Like, we've tried to think of every single element of sustainability when it comes to this swimwear. So if you're looking for something to wear when it warms up, because right now it's a little bit chilly, check out Stay Wild Swim.
Wow, that's cool. There's actually a couple of members of my team that work with me. They are huge proponents of trying to look at plastic in the oceans and stuff, and they do their bit. And we keep trying to think of an angle where we can help support it a little bit more in our business. Because as a supplement company, we use plastic. We encourage everyone to recycle it, but we feel like maybe we're not doing enough. We could be doing more. We could be just helping the ecosystem. So anything I can do to support that environment, I think is important, because there's nothing. I've been like you've turned up to a beautiful beach somewhere and there's just been shit floating around the water's edge, and you're just like, what? Like, what? Yeah, even in the most remote parts of the world. I was just in, literally, this is how remote I was 2 flights away from Jakarta, so in the very depths of Indonesia, and then a 5-hour boat ride to an island which is nowhere near anything else. And every single day I would do a beach clean and pick up a bag of waste. I was 5 hours away from civilization. It was literally horrific. And you're like, I am in the middle of paradise. So yeah, anything you can do, guys, any little thing you can do, please get involved. Awesome. Zanna, thank you incredibly for your time today. Keep doing what you're doing. You're an amazing, awesome human being. If you want to get involved in what Zanna's doing, follow her on the old social media. Look at her Facebook group. If you fancy a bikini, unfortunately, she doesn't have any budgie smugglers yet.
One day.
Then check out that. Otherwise, Zanna, thank you again for coming on the show. Legend.
Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Enjoy your time in Australia.
Thank you. I'm very much looking forward to it. Good luck with the January. Oh my God, good luck.
I'll let you know how I end up. The key thing is you listening to this show right now. If you want to support this information, then you need to go and give it a share somewhere on the internet. You need to try and tag someone in who you think should be aware of this message, is maybe open to this message. We need to keep sharing the kind of right information on social media. That's the only way that this N=1, this personal change, keeps proliferating and keeps happening, by the right kind of messages that are getting out. So if you like this podcast, you want to support its message, please get it out there. And if you happen to be new to this show, welcome. Hello. There's much to listen to. Otherwise, I will be back on Monday with a personal show, and then we'll be exploring vegan a little bit more, as Deliciously Ella is on next week's show. Right. That's it from me. Stay awesome. Goodbye.